For some context, about 24 years ago, I was assaulted by a close friend of mine and got pregnant by the encounter. I was inconsolable for months after the event. To make matters worse, I found out I was pregnant at about 20 weeks, and where I lived at the time, it was illegal to get an A after the first trimester. My husband had already been my rock and my support during that time, and I do not know how I would have ended up if not for him. He said that I could put it up for adoption, or I could keep the child and he would raise it like our other children. I decided to not give it up for adoption, but raising the kid was hard. I am half Polish and half German, and he is half German and half Russian. We both have pale skin, light hair, and blue eyes, as well as being fairly tall. I'm about 178 centimeters, or around 5'10", and he is 191 centimeters, or about 6'3". However, our daughter Luna is about 160 centimeters, or 5'3", has dark hair and a brown complexion, like her biological father. I often heard snide remarks about me being an unfaithful wife, because it was obvious that she was not my husband's child. It was especially hard for me when Luna was young, because she looked so much like her dad. My husband took care of my daughter most of the time, since I had flashbacks whenever I saw her face from when I was assaulted. As she grew up, it died down a bit, but I would still get these horrible panic attacks when I saw her wearing boys' clothes and short hair. Since I was prone to having panic attacks, Luna ended up being closer to my husband than she was to me. Also, she often ended up getting a little more than her siblings from my husband, as some sort of compensation because of me. We never told her that she was the product of SA, because I was too ashamed, and my husband did not want her feeling different from her siblings. I often told her that me and her biological father got into an altercation and never spoke to one another ever again. About 2 years ago, she got one of those DNA test items and found out she had a relative in the system. Said relative got Luna in touch with her bio dad, and they started talking despite my protests. He apparently wanted to speak to me about something he wanted to tell me, so Luna attempted to persuade me to speak with him. I made her aware that me and her father shouldn't ever be in the same room together. Now, Luna is getting married to a lovely young man. Some of the virus restrictions have been lifted, so she is able to have a decent-sized wedding. The original plan was to have my husband walk her down the aisle, but he had gotten into a bad accident, leaving him in a wheelchair until his legs are strong enough to support his weight again. However, this is not her idea of a picture-perfect wedding day, so she invited her biological father to have the honor of being the bride's father. Her wedding invitation not only invited my R, but she totally disrespected the man who raised her. Although I or a bridesmaid could have pushed him down the aisle, she thinks it would not fit the vibe of the wedding. My husband looked so shocked and upset that she would even think of this, but I was furious. I have a visceral hate for that man, and I let her know that I would not be anywhere near him. She told me that this is what she wants, and there's no changing her mind. So I told her that I will not be attending if he's there. She got upset and told me that I shouldn't hang on to the past, but I laid it into her that she doesn't know what happened between me and her biological father, so she shouldn't stick her nose where it doesn't belong. Though I feel terrible about what I said and how I said it, and she can't be blamed for her being born or not knowing what happened, since I never told her. I still feel as though my wishes should be respected if I say I don't want to be in the same room as someone. I'm now okay with her contacting her father. I just do not want anything to do with him. Also, it's rude to replace your father with another man who you've barely known for 2 years because of something he couldn't control. Can anyone offer me a perspective that I am not catching? Has anyone ever dealt with this, and if so, how? You need to tell her how she was conceived. You did her a disservice by concealing that from her and allowing her to have a relationship with an R. Now that R has obviously fed her a narrative that paints him in a convenient light. Who knows what else that man could do? Tell her immediately. She should know that the picture-perfect wedding she wants will forever be marred by having an R there. If after telling her she sticks to her guns, let her know you won't have a relationship with someone who so easily sides with an R. Before I get started on the update, I have a few things that I want to address. A lot of people have questioned me on why I did not tell my daughter that she was a product of SA. The only answer is that I was ashamed of myself. For some context, before I got married to my husband, I actually was very close friends with my attacker. We grew up together in a small community, and our families were close. Our parents even wanted us to get together. He was always interested in me, but I didn't give him a chance until university. I broke it off with him and started dating my husband, but I never cut him off because we were very close. He invited me over to drink. This was normal for us, and when I started getting a bit tipsy, he R'd me. I was very traumatized by the situation and tried to get him jailed, but I couldn't. He had a very good reputation, so everyone believed him, even my own mother. When he said I willingly came over and did it with him, I eventually stopped pursuing because of the social pressure, which only got worse when I found out I was pregnant. I eventually left that place with my husband and kids to live somewhere else. After I gave birth, my husband suggested therapy, but I was scared of being judged again, so I decided to bury it and try to forget about it. I just realized now that it was the worst way to go about this, but it's the only way I knew how to, honestly. On to the update. After reading all the advice I'd gotten, I decided that I should stop running away and tell her everything. I called her to come over, and she did. I first apologized for yelling at her for her suggestion, because in her mind, it was an innocent suggestion. I told her that I wasn't angry at her, but how fast she was willing to replace her father because he was in a wheelchair, and that anger was compounded because she brought up her genetic father. I apologized again for acting childish and not like an adult. She asked me why I am so against her genetic father being in the same vicinity as I am, and I just told her everything from our initial friendship to her forced conception. She didn't believe me, like some Redditors predicted, but I can get a copy of the records of the court case and offered them to her if she needed a look. She looked stunned, like she wanted to believe me but couldn't. I apologized for keeping all this from her because I didn't know how to bring it up. She told me she didn't believe me and would confirm with her genetic father, so I told her to take the time she needed to process all this. Later that day, she came again, crying and apologizing for not believing me. I held her and cried and apologized too. It was kind of therapeutic. We had a long chat and I did feel closer to her. When we were done, she said she wanted to take me out to a surprise to help me feel better in a couple of days, which I happily agreed to. I went to see her yesterday in this little restaurant with a patio that had a private pay-for-use area for a maximum of 4 people, due to pandemic. As she ran up to me to give me a hug, she led me to the patio, where her biological father stood. She told me he was here to apologize and start my healing journey. I just wanted to leave, but he grabbed my hand and all those memories I tried to repress just came back out. I started having a panic attack and lost balance, to which he tried to help me keep my balance, which worsened everything. I honestly don't remember how I left, but I ended up in my car just sobbing. I called my elder son to pick me up because I was not fit to drive at that moment. Today, my daughter called me upset that I ruined her surprise, but I was extremely upset with her. I asked her why she did that when she knows everything that happened between me and him, and she tried to use the excuse of my healing journey, but I wasn't having it. She admitted that she wanted me to get used to him because he's gonna be walking her down the aisle along with my husband and doing the daddy-daughter dance. I told her that while I loved her and respect her decision to be with him, I am not willing to be anywhere he is. She started complaining about how she wants all her family to be there, and I'm still not forgiving, but I hung up the phone. My husband is aware of everything and stands by me of not going to her wedding, but I don't want this. If my other children were to know, they would stand by me and tell the rest of their extended family, which is going to lead to my daughter getting disowned by the family. Anyways, one good thing to come out of this is that I'm finally confident enough to seek therapy. I may be way off here, but your kids and the rest of your family deserve to know the truth. She deserves to be disowned. You have suffered enough for her. If I was your child or a family member, I would want the chance to do right by you. Also, she may tell them regardless. It's best they hear it from you before she spins the story to make her seem like the reasonable one. My husband and I got married in August. Before, during, and after the wedding, my mother, who had flown in from out of town with the rest of my family, made a lot of unnecessary drama. I won't go into details on her past, but this was expected on my part, and therefore I was prepared and not as affected by most of it as I otherwise would have been. A few key details just to give an idea. She decided not to plan a bridal shower, but didn't tell anyone. My now sister-in-law had completely redecorated her yard, including renting hundreds of dollars of supplies to host my large out-of-town family. And I had planned no shower with local family, friends, because we thought it would occur when my family arrived. We found out 4 days before the shower was to take place, and only because I asked her to confirm a guest count. She lied about passing along details about lodging to the rest of my family. As a result, my extended family all stayed over an hour away, and I was not able to spend any time with them as I had planned. I don't see my extended family often. In fact, some of these family members I hadn't seen in over 10 years. Despite me giving her a detailed schedule and rechecking multiple times day of, she brought my dress 90 minutes late. Because of this, we had no time to steam the dress. It is very wrinkled in all of the photos. and I missed out on a lot of the photographer's time. This also put me into a very hurried state and an already stressful day. This last point was the kicker. I obviously was very upset while waiting for my mother to arrive with the dress and trying very hard not to cry and ruin hair and makeup and the general mood of the day. When she finally arrived, she screamed at me. This is not an exaggeration, and in fact upset a lot of the guests that witnessed this, as this made matters worse for me, and as it was only an hour before the ceremony was to start, and we were already late in taking bridal party photos because of the dress being late. I made the decision that I could not handle speaking with her until after the ceremony. She refused to accept this and fought with a bridesmaid to get into the dressing room. I had my bridesmaid calmly, I could hear this happening, tell her that I wanted to talk to her after the ceremony, but I was very upset and could not talk before. She refused to talk to me or my husband after the ceremony. Neither she nor my father talked to any of my friends, my husband's friends, or my husband's family. I heard from other guests that she was insulting my bridesmaids, both the one who asked her not to speak to me and another. Throughout the night, the only time she spoke to me was at the end of the night when she said, "Don't worry, you won't see me tomorrow." She and my father had planned to help clean up the next morning. They did not show up, and we were barely able to finish cleanup on time. The rest of the time she was in town, she refused to speak to me or my husband, or to even be in the same room with me. If I was around, she would go sit in her car. My parents went on a quick road trip, then came back to our city for dinner, and because they needed a ride to the airport after dropping off their rental car, both of them acted as if nothing was wrong, which is how my family has always dealt with conflict: denial. As I have gotten away from this environment, I have learned how damaging it can be and refused to follow that same pattern. When she left, she said, "We'll talk." I haven't spoken since. This includes not calling me on my 30th birthday, 1 month after the wedding. I have maintained contact with my aunt, mother's best friend, since, and she has said my mother is stubborn and will never contact me unless I apologize to her. As I feel I have nothing to apologize for, I am not going to do that. I have always felt very manipulated by my mother, and now that I am old enough to recognize that her behavior is unhealthy and hurting me, I have decided not to give in to it. She is surrounded by people who fear her moods, and so she is not used to having someone stand up to her. This has been incredibly painful for me, as I have always craved and worked hard for unconditional love from my parents, and this situation has made me realize it just isn't going to happen. It is doubly upsetting because I always assumed I could rely on my father to be reasonable, but he has also not contacted me. Yesterday, I received an email from my mother, the first contact in over 2 months. I had posted on Facebook that we received our pictures from the photographer and that I had access codes for everyone who wanted to order copies. The subject line of her email was, "Please give me the code for the pictures." The body of the email was blank. I feel that if I say something to her, it will be giving in. I know that may seem petty, but these kinds of behaviors have been very damaging to me throughout my life, and the separation from my family helped me learn healthy ways to interact with people. I would not feel good about myself if I, again, gave in. I also do not want to give her access to these pictures unless she understands how she has hurt me. I hate that that sounds like an ultimatum, but it's not. I feel that, based on her previous behaviors, she will use these photos in a manipulative way, to make others feel sorry for her, or to convince herself that she is a good mother. This, again, is based on things she has done in the past, and something I have tried to deny for a long time, but realize I cannot. However, because my parents contributed a good amount of money to the wedding, and because I still care very much about them, I want them to have the pictures. I just want an apology first. Do I respond at all? Do I respond with a contingency? Do I reply with just the code for the pictures and not actual communication? Whoa. Okay. You do not owe your parents a single thing. She is completely wrong. It is so unfair for her to treat you this way. Just because she helped you financially does not mean that you have to allow her to emotionally aid you. I wouldn't respond at all. Or I would just shoot her an email with half of the code and allow her to receive the rest once you receive an apology.